So there's a lot of worry, I think, in the industry going right now that, developer jobs are essentially being replaced, right? And it is something that I find quite frustrating because it makes a lot of sense to someone who has never written code, but to someone who's actually reviewing the code out of these kind of, requests that come out of LLMs, it would be very clear that LLMs are nowhere close to replacing us. I mean, like the AI companies do want us to believe that this is true, but not really. So the thing is, all of these discussions usually happen in these abstract ways. Like I've seen so many videos about people talking about, maybe AI produces slop, what exactly slop is. So what I decided to do is I decided to take a smaller target, right? So I was building something, it's called Cogninode. I'll first walk into like what Cogninode does. Like I'm building it in the open source space, right? So first is why I decided to build Cogninode. I started using Claude Code or like any of the LLM. It really doesn't matter. I've tried it with all kinds of LLM. I was able to scaffold and get it working. But yesterday I sat to review the code and the utter bullshit that LLMs produce, I wanted to highlight. So for very initial context, this is a super technical video, right? So I think maybe the title will most probably be something like AI is not even going to replace front-end developers. And it's not a pull on front-end development. Front-end development has become pretty complicated with a thick client. Like, in today's day and age, what has exactly happened is, if you think about it, right? Uh, Front-end code itself has become fairly complicated. There was a time where, like, we had thin clients and like we didn't have much processing power, and like server development for some reason was considered superior to front-end development, as still is in a lot of Indian as well as maybe even the Silicon Valley perspective. So I mean, I have this fear coming from people that, like, front-end development might actually be replaced, and maybe there's some issues with backend and stuff like that. The project is purely local, so it is running on the front end. It is using React, and it's actually fairly a straightforwardly simple code base, right? The number of code that I have written for my code base is relatively smaller, so we can eliminate discussions that people talk about use of AI. How big the context is growing. This is a very simple problem statement I have asked AI to do. So we'll eliminate the common complaints that people talk about initially, which is one, that, oh boss, sorry, like, your context, you are not managing context properly. Not really. The whole code base can get into context quite easily. It's not that big. The project is fairly simple. It's a front end only project. Right, at the moment it's a front-end only project, so the hallucination is limited to literally client-side code, right? This is what I would expect like a junior engineer to write, or maybe even a fresher to write at current day and age, right? So it's not a big problem set. So I just want to put these boundaries before the discussion, because I really want to get into the depth of the discussion. And you would need to know some amount of React to understand this, but only a preliminary understanding of React is all you need. So if you have that understanding, feel free to follow along, right? And this is me only reviewing, not the entire code base, only reviewing one JSX file, like literally the entry point, right? And this is on the top models. You can whatever imagine with maximum effort put into them. Like I can even show the windows into the context itself. So like all of these discussion that, oh, it's a skill issue, like, vibe coding has this problem with context. Nah, it's because there are a lot of backend systems are not necessarily code based. We do understand that, like, it's fairly hard to express your AWS architecture in code, even though there are solutions that claim it. I would say Convex is a good solution. Again, I'm not paid by them, but I love Convex. My God, that's a good solution in today's AI world, like, generative world. So the front end only solution, it's like very simple to understand. And then it's like one line, one JSX file that I'm talking about, like where my whole frustration lies. So if you have a manager who says, oh, you just should push more code, maybe show him this video, because it's really stupid. I do not understand how, like, the so-called LLM, like, a version that is trained using Mythos, right, is so dumb. Right? Like, it's just like, and like, let's start discussions, right? First is, like, if you look at how LLM works, right, the current LLM revolution is all about this principle called attention. The problem that I've had is its attention is super poor. Like a good example that works still in all LLMs is, you can try this out. Like, you can ask it a question that, I want to wash my car. It's The car wash is about 100 meters away. Okay, should I walk or should I drive? Try this in a non-memory setting, because if you asked this question recently and fixed it, it would use memory. So go into like those incognito mode of any LLM. What you would notice is the LLM completely forgets. This is not a big context. Like completely forgets I want to wash my car and focuses on only 100 meters and its relation between walk and drive. This is what LLM is. That's the problem. It's essentially a probability function that focuses on particular things and associates them. Like there is an association with 100 meters and the question being whether I should walk or drive, completely forgetting that the whole point of this argument is that I want to wash my car, right? And I don't think there's a way to solve this, right? Like I just don't see in the current way the LLMs are built, it will be solved. Like I genuinely do feel there are other approaches. I would like go into something like AlphaGo. The way they taught how to learn Go to the system would be another layer of LLM. So if you ask me how I see the future, LLMs are still just purely a language model that helps you communicate with the system. And I do feel like there would be internal models that would be purely hard to communicate directly from human beings. This would be models that are maybe specialized in Go, maybe specialized in Java, and maybe specialized in JavaScript and all of the other things, including editing, which are purely abstract models, right? They have learned how to do this on their own and have become better than humans. I don't know where that part of machine learning went into. It's so ridiculous that people don't talk about it. That's how we beat people at Go. That's how we beat people at chess. Go was extremely complicated as a problem space. You ask an LLM to play a Go game and let's see if it can beat you. I can guarantee you Mythos will not be able to beat you in Go. If you take like the best Go expert, I don't even think you have to go to the best Go expert. An LLM will not be able to beat it. And like this whole idea that LLM is thinking is complete garbage, right? It is absolutely complete garbage, right? So, and this is with thinking on, right? These are I'm talking about like on thinking models also, right? On sometimes even high, I've seen this fail, right? Now think about this, right? This is a very small problem statement. So is my demo. Like the thing that I'm building is an extremely small problem statement. Now assume a code base as big as Google or Facebook or Amazon, where these guys are continuously pushing these LLMs. This exponentially can increase and can lead to extremely crazy vulnerabilities. I do not think this future is a good direction. And like, I have these arguments with my friend where he says, ki, who the hell cares about code quality, right? The customer doesn't. You have to just deliver product. And I was obsessed about this. That's why I fully vibe coded essentially the platform. But as soon as I thought, ki, as a customer, let's just check the functionality and see if it's working. That is the only reason I was reading code. And it was utterly broken. My God. So all the abstract talks over. Like we have discussed what we are going to do. We are going to actually analyze some code written in the front end domain, only in the front end domain, very simple principles, right? And we are going to talk exactly what broke down, right? So let's talk about the app first, right? Again, this is open source. I will actually link the code at the bottom. Feel free to, contribute. I'm not accepting pull requests at the moment. I'm still trying to refine all the garbage that AI has done before I accept any pull requests from you guys. Most probably it's generated by AI as well. And I don't want to have more bloat, but feel free to start it. It's something really cool. So my big frustration when using LLMs has purely been that LLMs do not think the way we do, like, or essentially the chat platforms, right? Let's talk about ChatGPT, right? So for example, I'll just show you like a good example of what I'm trying to say. And again, no disrespect to ChatGPT or any of those crazy, what we say, LLM platforms. Like I use you guys, I like it as a search tool. I just don't think it's good for builders, right? So like when I'm, for example, looking into something more complicated than just asking a dumb question that I could have asked to Google anyway and could have gotten an answer, right? Let's say that I want to explore deep into how did classes come into the world? How did classes come into the world? I'm like trying to figure out how did this class concept come into the world, right? How did it originate, right? And can you tell me the history, right? So I really do want to understand this. Like here I'm using LLM as a learning platform, and that's what I feel like LLMs could be really good at, right? So like, it's actually going to like, code hidden. I do not bloody know what's going on here. I don't even think I did it in hidden. Like, okay, whatever, right? For most human history, we have lived in small tribes, and I don't know what is going on. No. I mean, wow, great. No, I mean classes in programming. Wow, it actually just generated. Okay, my English just sucks. Sorry, I have dyslexia. I'm so sorry. It's so stupid. But yeah, anyway, before classes, it talks about assembly, it talks about Fortran, it talks about COBOL, right? And like while I'm reading this, like I might be curious of something like Simula, right? Simula is like a thing that existed. It basically was, if I'm not wrong, developed for a freight system where they wanted to model how the logistics happen in freight, if I'm not wrong, shipping and freights and factories and shit like that. So what they found out is procedural code is not the great solution, right? If you want to use essentially a way to model world, objects are a really good idea, and that's how it came into picture. Now, I could ask ChatGPT this. There's an option which ChatGPT allows where I could just ask it directly, and some of you might have version, but like it allows you to branch also. Like in most like premium versions, I think I'm on Go. Like I think most LLMs allow you to branch this conversation also. But usually what I've seen is like, let's actually pull up Claude and let's try the same thing, because I think I have a bigger Claude subscription. I think I'm paying for Claude. So tell me how came into picture in programming. Okay, I'm going to increase it to like the best model according to you guys, whatever, like that. I don't care. Most of them are like purely basically a more advanced version of search than it is being sold to you as. Like it's not really a solution. But yeah, anyway, let's go into what it actually comes up with, right? You know, let's see if I can see. Wait, no, I want the history, bro. I want a detailed history. Right? I'm trying to understand what the detailed history is, right? Like I really want to know, because I feel like if you want to learn something, you need to go through the deep roots. Like for example, I believe in systems first thinking. So like if you want to understand object-oriented programming really well, why not understand how it existed in the first place? Let's see if it is actually able to come up with Scala or any of the examples like Smalltalk. So what is going on? What is going on? I don't even know. Yeah, I think it did come up with here. I'm so stupid. Like in front of the camera, I sometimes blank out completely. Right? It did suggest Smalltalk, right? And if you see in all of these models, and I do not understand why this is not there, right? I think Theo does a really good job in T3 chat where you are actually able to like branch it. But then here is the problem that I have, right? When I actually want to ask something about Smalltalk, can you tell me a little bit about Smalltalk and how OOBS was different there? Oh God. Yeah, thank you. I did not ask you to produce an MD file, but okay, whatever. It did produce a big history document. I do not know why it did that. But anyway, can you tell me a little bit about Smalltalk and how OOBS was different there? See, I'll tell you what actually happens and why I actually build Cogninode, right? So, for example, here I want to know about Smalltalk, and I then start reading about Smalltalk, right? But like, I kind of lose context, right? I was reading somewhere here when I saw Smalltalk, right? And I would love to read forward and like talk about the history of C and how C++ introduced programming, like, object-oriented programming inside. But like, I've kind of lost the context. I've kind of lost the picture because, I'm suddenly switching context and I'm reading this and then I have to go back and forth. My example that I give to people, chat is such a stupid way to talk to an LLM. Like, I do not understand in what world people thought chat is a good way. Just think about this, right? If you think, what is the most frustrating chat platform you know of, right? Like if you work in a job, right, there is a corporate product that I want to pretty much choke to death, right? And if most of you have had this frustration in programming, it is Teams, because there's a bunch of random fucking chats everywhere, right? There are like chats everywhere on the platform in Teams. And like if I want to look for something, there is no bloody organization, because threads are something these donkeys will never understand and Microsoft will never fix, because they're a bunch of woozies who just want to, like, essentially is a what do you say, illegal, if you would like, I would claim, according to me, is a pretty much illegal monopoly, right? It's bullshit, right? We already know how there's a better solution than Teams, right? If I'm talking about Microsoft Teams, there is a better solution than Teams, and most probably your manager doesn't want to buy it because he's a pussy or whatever, right? It's Slack. And why do I like Slack? Because when you are asking a question, like in the team, I ask a question, right? The responses are threads of the same bloody question. So I don't have to read all of this garbage if I don't have to care about it, right? A single thread can have active conversations running about the discussion without having to frustrate myself to the end to read through all of the chat to get to the next topic. This could be something like, my prod is broken, right? This could be something like, my prod is broken, and if this is the thing that I'm trying to fix, I can help someone. But like if something, I am a React expert and there's a question about React, right? It is in the same thread, like, but below, and there are more discussions going on here. It actually makes you bloody think. And this itself is just not present in like our chat systems. Like right now, if you want to use any of the LLM tools as knowledge gathering, this does not exist. I would say, like, I would go one level above Slack and say each reply should be able to be a thread as well. This is how humans think. Humans think in this branching fashion. Like, for example, when you talk about, like, when I talk about my friend who I know through Rohan, my context is Rohan, right? Like it thinks like our brain is designed this way. It's neurons, it's connections, right? You make one connection after another connection. That is why I built Cogninode. Now, the difference in Cogninode is very simple. Like, let's try the same example. I have actually spun it up somewhere here. So while I'm reading about classes, right? Let's say that it's, and again, of course, it's 100 times cheaper than Claude, because, there are other models which are freer and better and open source, right? Open weight particularly. So for example, if I don't know about something, right, I'm reading about this, I don't particularly know much about abstract data type, I can just type branch, can you tell me more? And just forget about this chat, I can just continue reading back. I can continue reading back while it's thinking about that chat for me. That's exactly how I think, right? I wanted to know more about abstract data types that maybe I want to visit later. It's a thread in my brain. Maybe I don't want to actively pursue it. I don't want the answer right now. And that's how I've built it. It's a completely open source, like, chat platform. You can put your own open router key. Eventually, I'll move it as a service where you essentially get a tree. Like, your questions are essentially a tree. So what are classes? I had questions like, okay, let's talk about, metadata. And if I ever want to go about, meta classes, I can go to meta classes and read about this. If I feel like this is something I want to explore later, I can just keep it. It's in the same hierarchy of the chat. There is branching, but why is there not threading? I just don't get it, right? So first thing, LLM platforms want to sell you a thing that really doesn't work. We'll discuss that later by seeing what code it produces for this, which is utter garbage. Second, they can't even give you a good interface. Chat is such a horrible interface, right? Even there are better chat interfaces. Slack is a better chat interface. Why doesn't ChatGPT look like what? Slack? I do not know. It would use less tokens also. Any person with half a brain would understand that a DFS would require less tokens. Thus, even a long threaded conversation would be more coherent. You know why they don't want to do this? Of course they don't want to do this. They don't want to make search really good, which I really am trying to make in this app. They don't want to make sure that you use less tokens, because that's what they are selling. Oh, we are selling this many tokens. This is our growth trajectory. They don't care much about profitability to 1 degree. So that's why I built Cogninode. Now, this is the reason I built this system. I completely wipe coded it. So again, if someone is curious, it's ravulmohandev/Cogninode. The repo is open and you can feel free to like look through it. It's actually quite fun, right? You can put your own open router key. Now, here is what I'm really frustrated about. It produced something that's working. What you see here is something that it produced on its own, completely fine. Good job. Awesome, right? Now, let's talk about just one component. In this whole component, there is a component that it auto-generated, and do not tell me that my spec file wasn't good. For this, I literally created a 200, 200, 500, context length prompt to build this, and I asked sub-agents to delegate it. I made sure context is low. I made sure things are not that bad. The whole code base is not that big. I burned through a lot of tokens. And the utter garbage it has in one file is abhorringly stupid, right? So let's discuss what it did. And I actually show you proofs on this also, right? So what it did is it actually created this file that I don't exactly remember, but it was called, I think, API gateway. Let me actually check the code. Pull request. Okay, recent merges. My God, this is so utter garbage, right? So I have only started reviewing this code yesterday properly, right? So yes. Okay, awesome, right? Awesome. So the original file was API gateway.tsx. You can look through the history if you really don't believe me, right? And again, I'm not against AI coding. I'm just saying it's just one more layer of just utter garbage. It's not going to make you fast, because I can only review about at max 300 lines of code a day properly, like maybe 500, right? And if you don't review this code, it's utter garbage. So like, let's talk about how it built API gateway.tsx, right? So let's talk about API gateway.tsx. The way it built API gateway.tsx is not too bad, right? It actually it actually had a form, like actually show you live also. It actually had this form where you would put the key, right? And it would store it in local storage. Good job. It's okay. I would like you to store it in local storage. It's completely local app. That's fine. Okay. No issues. Thank you. You did well, right? Not a problem, right? And then after storing it in local storage, it created a hook. And I was assuming that hook has some context. No, it does not. Now the dumb shit it did is, right? After like, let me tell you about the utter garbage that it did, and you can actually check the request. Step number one, this basic things, right? It was using local state. Like after loading the key in local storage, it had individual copies for different components. So there's a different component that renders these responses that you see, which is directly streaming through Open Router. It had a same replica of the key there. What? Why does it have a replica of the key? Why is there not a source of truth at the top? So what was happening is, when I was putting a key, right? When I was putting a key and when I was trying to clear the key. So if you look here, if I go into the settings, and when I go into the settings and I was removing this key, okay, nothing happened. The UI did not go back to the setup screen where it asks you for a key. Nothing happened because it was clearing its local state in the individual component and did not have context. How the bloody hell does this? Like, I do not know which retarded programmer would not be able to do this. Like, I don't get it. Like, I don't get it. Like, I'm just so frustrated with fucking AI, right? It took all of this, like 3 components using this key, right? Which is used as the primary source of truth, right? For the API calls. This is local, guys. You can read this code. It's utter garbage, right? So it was creating copies of the local state without having a context. So when I was clearing something downstream, nothing worked. This is React 101. How is this model this good? People are talking that's amazing. This is React 101. Okay, let's say, okay, fine. The code was too big. It couldn't figure out the simple thing of moving the context up because, of course, guys, I am bad at prompting, right? Issue number 2. There are 3 or 4 issues in one single file, right? So it has to validate if this key is right. Okay. The way it validated it is it was hitting literally an open endpoint. It was hitting Open Router's open endpoint, which lists the models, which is completely open, and sending the bearer token. So what it did is it created auth that was not auth. I want it to authenticate if the key is right so that the user can use it. So that he can't just write ABCD and it's hitting the bearer token with ABCD. The way it verified it is there is this endpoint, I think it's v1 slash models or something like that. Completely open. And it got 200 and it's like, yeah, awesome. Very good. Yay, perfect authentication. Like, what? This is just one file. I do not know, guys, why we have put ourselves into this belief that we can be replaced by this garbage. And when I ask it, why don't you just use the SDK? And I understand the SDK version is still not that great. So Open Router has an SDK version and it is not the best because it's still experimental. It does not even know it exists. Of course it doesn't, because yeah, of course I have to tell it everything, right? I have to be so specific in my MD file. I will just forget the MD file and write the bloody code. This is so stupid. My God, it's so stupid, right? And okay, so the check fails, it does not work properly, right? And what we say now, here is the funny thing, right? So I would say, okay, bro, okay, hear me out, okay? One more thing I need you to do for me, right? So whenever someone clears, right? So this is my last request. This is my last request, LLMs, and I don't care if it's Claude, I don't care if it's OpenAI, it's all the same. They have really poor attention. The whole strategy that attention is the core way to work with AI is just utter garbage. Like, trust me, guys. Right? This is like, I don't know why we believe this. Right? We should all push back to our companies and just stop using AI. Like, we should use AI as a knowledge exploration tool, as a substitute to Stack Overflow, rather than a substitute to programming. Right? I just don't get it. Right? But like, so what I asked it, like, so whenever I reset, right? Okay, whenever I reset, okay, what I want you to do is, as I suggested above, right? Move the state up, right? Whenever I reset, because the state is now in a context, it will automatically reset, and the user will be able to put the key. In case they lose the key, they do something shady with the key inside, they change it in the local storage, XYZ. Awesome. You know what its suggestion was? Rahul, what's the recommended suggestion? Like, I'll show you. The recommended solution from these tools. And I used to believe these recommended solutions are the good ones, right? It has thought about it somewhere, right? The recommended solution is, after you press clear, I will refresh the browser. What? You can't move the state up, you will refresh the browser. You guys don't understand. LLMs have learned from us so much that it also does jugaad. In Hindi, jugaad just means the easy way out. The recommended way is not the theoretical best way. It is literally the easy way out. It's like, less files touched, less problem, let's take this. It's literally like giving it to some stupid developer who is like just starting off, who does not know anything about code. And the first option he has, whenever there's a problem, is, let's just hard code window.refresh into the code. It's just utter garbage, right? And you guys are like, of course, I made this up, right? This cannot possibly be right. This is not how these LLMs work. No, it's exactly how these LLMs work, right? So like, its first suggestion, right? When I asked these kind of questions, its first suggestion was literally to do that. Like, and see, for example, I asked it, right? Curl isn't available in Notepad, whatever, right? I asked it to fix the auth, right? And you can see it, right? Like, it's trying to say, okay, you are kind of right. The endpoint that I was hitting, right? If you see here, this is the current endpoint that it was hitting. It's a 200. Validates nothing. Why did the LLM think this was a good way to authenticate an API, or like authenticate the API using the bearer token? I'll tell you why. This is the most simplest way. It's literally, it read the doc, it looked at the first API, did not care if it was authenticated or not, and just ran it. The thing with attention is, it optimizes for ease. And ease is not always the right solution in programming. You might be able to scaffold an app like I did. It's quite, it works, but it's garbage. And then it's asking me, okay, you know what I'll do? I'll use this API auth.key, which gives me 401. And I'm like, what kind of retarded nonsense is this? The keys is an exchange where you could potentially have auth built yourself. It's an OAuth path. That was its suggestion. So like, so I can read that, I can use this. And I'm like, are you a fucking idiot? OAuth is for OAuth flow. You're stopping writing me. Let me use an unambiguous one. Like, why did we believe that this would replace us? I do not know, guys. Like, are you guys not reading? Like, it gave me such a frustrating heart attack, pretty much, to see the code that LLM is producing. Like, and like, are you guys not seeing this? Are you guys like not looking at the output? And like, you can see the context usage is well within the limit. I make sure that it's always the case, right? Because these AI gurus are like, context is the problem. No, the statement I gave you has very few tokens. The problem is attention. And the attention infrastructure these guys have built is just not the solution when it comes to doing these LLM problems. And that is basically my rant. I'm sorry if I went overboard. And of course, feel free to guys come and try out. I would love your feedback if you're using Cogninode. It's something that I'm building with passion. I really think the current way these tools are implemented is just wrong. So please feel free to give me a star, or give me a comment, give me a suggestion. I would really love to see you guys contribute. So it's just I'm not against using these LLM tools. They're pretty cool, right? I'll be honest, they're pretty cool. My problem is we have to just slow down and realize that we have to do something that Facebook does, maybe like it used to. Maybe I don't know if it does it anymore. We have to do spike and stabilize, right? We cannot release a feature until we stabilize. We can spike and get something out, but I genuinely believe before we send something to the customer, I think we should read the code that it has written very thoroughly, right? And it takes time. And I'm not really sure based on what I've seen, right? The code was not one-shotted, but it essentially got this running maybe in a week, 2 days, maybe with maybe not that many prompts. But my problem is I might have to spend the next 2 weeks reviewing every single piece of line of code to make sure that it's right. And now the question that I have is, could I have not just written the code over the 3 weeks and then gotten the same result? I'm not sure. I'm actually not sure. I'm not sure if Mythos will solve that. The problem is with attention, with these loops where the system gets attached to the wrong thing. It's just trying to say, okay, I want to authenticate when someone gives me an API key or an open router key, and it really doesn't care how it does it. Just like the car wash example, it really doesn't care how it does it. And this amplified over a large code base can make code really bad. And the problem is, you might wonder, does it really matter, Rahul, if it's functional? It does. These debts do add up, and it can cause a major problem. So I really hope that you're reading the code that these LLMs are producing, because it's garbage, guys. Seriously, my God. I was under the belief that it's decent, maybe it's okay, but sometimes I see shit that it pulls out and it's just horrible. Okay, so that's me ranting for about 30 minutes. Follow for more. I would say maybe subscribe if you want to know, if you want to continue seeing me rant about these technical topics and have a vector of discussions, which I think is absent in today's tech bro nonsense, right? I really want to write good code, and I would love to at least review good code, right? And I would still encourage all of you to continue learning programming, because if you really think that LLMs are going to replace programming in general, I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong. It's a great discovery tool. It's a great search tool. I think it's a great alternative to something like Google to search things. But it's really good for knowledge discovery, right? But is it good for automated work? I don't think it'll ever be. And that's kind of my argument. So I hope you continue learning whatever language you're learning with passion, right? There is no winning around this. That's about it, guys.